Ian Trottier here for Discussions of Truth. We have the greatest freedom fighter in Canada. Now, Chris Sky, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, my family, you may not know this, but Trottier, you're familiar with that name? Hockey player, right? Hockey name. Trottier, what's that, Roger?
Brian
Trottier, yes.
New York Islander.
New York Islander. And what you don't know is Roger. Roger's from Long Island.
Oh, nice.
I was the NHL fan of the year in 2003.
Amazing.
So Brian Trottier, one of the greatest NHL Hall of Famers, of course, is a descendant of Jules Trottier, as am I. And Jules Trottier landed in Quebec in 1642. So, Chris, when I was in Miami and I was investigating the Zika virus, a former JAG lawyer out of Tallahassee says, Ian, don't protest the Zika virus and the pesticide because you'll be charged as a terrorist. Now, Chris, I thought, wait a second. I've been on the North American continent for 18 generations. Nobody's calling me a terrorist except for the natives that were here before Jules had arrived. That was how I reacted. Now, Chris, first time we met, but we've worked together in the past. Tell listeners what's going on with Chris Sky.
So if you guys don't know, my name's Chris Sky. I'm from Canada. I became an activist against all the COVID measures when I saw the destruction it was going to do to the small business sector, the children, and our way of life in general, including my own business. I come from a development background, develop, design, and build. So even though I work in the private sector, I had to work with the government in every facet of my business. So I have a unique position that I got to see on both sides of the fence, private and public. And all I got to see is how corrupt governments are, how they lie, how they like to use leverage and manipulate people. So when COVID came out, the first thing I thought is this is a government plan. And the second thing I thought is this is going to decimate small businesses in Canada, the US. And for you guys that don't understand how much of the backbone of the economy small business is, it's 97% of all the businesses in both Canada and the US, and it represents something like 70% of all the jobs. And we lost 30% of those businesses during COVID. So my first step was to try to save the economy, save people's rights and freedoms, save children from the lockdown measure that was going on in school, because those lockdown measures were nothing more than trauma-based conditioning that was going to psychologically damage these kids, destroy their potential as an adult, and really, if you destroy the children, you've destroyed society. So we had to stand up, we had to start fighting. I started speaking out, I started nonprofits, I started speaking out internationally. I was arrested 27 times, I faced 73 charges, and I beat them all. I was banned from the United States, but I wanted to do a tour. I'm calling it the Tour to Unite the World, or to change the world. And we do that by uniting the world. And we do that by bringing one cohesive message from one person to all the major Commonwealth countries. I started in Canada, and I needed to go to the States first. Why? Because I knew it would be hard to get in here, and I knew this is the #1 source of freedom in the entire world. So I took a bus from Mexico, like any good illegal one.
Any good illegal?
And I tried
Hey, you got health care.
No, I didn't. I set off alarm bells at the border when they scanned my passport. I got detained, I got questioned, I got put in a cell for 7 hours, and then they woke me up from my nap to ask me some more questions. And when they realized who I was and why I was coming to the U.S., I was actually nominated for an American Liberty Award in Texas.
Nice.
I was the only non-American nominated.
Yes.
And I won it, by the way, which is also awesome. So the U.S. Customs and Border couldn't say no. They let me in with smiles, and I have to give them a shout out because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for your law enforcement,
Thank you, Texas.
Thank you, Texas. Thank you, U.S. Customs and Border. If they didn't believe in the Constitution, if they didn't believe in freedom, and they didn't believe in it so much that they extended it to a non-citizen, I wouldn't be here, and your country wouldn't be the greatest and most free in the world. So now that I'm here, I'm on the tour to change the world.
He's not going back to Canada.
Not anytime soon. I'm going all over the states. I was in Texas. I was in Florida. I passed through Kentucky, Louisiana, Alabama, New Mexico, Colorado. I'm here. I'm going to California, Washington, and Vermont. And then
Oregon's next month, September, he's going to be in Oregon.
No, I'm not. Don't give him false info. I'm like, wait a second. Was I booked in Oregon? I didn't know about it.
I'm trying to book him.
I know, but I have to escape. I have to escape before they reinstall the mandates, and I can't travel again. So I'm going off to the UK. I'm already booked there for the 19th of September to October 2nd. the worldwide rally, the biggest rally in the world.
Is that David Icke who's putting that on?
It's by the worldwide rally people. It happens all over the world, and the largest one is in London, England, and I'm going to be at that rally. I'm also going to be doing at least one, if not two shows with David Icke, who's going to be traveling around the UK at the time. I'm going to be in Liverpool at a rally. I'm going to be in the Netherlands, and then the tour is going to keep going on to Australia.
Wow.
So when I say I'm ready to unite the Commonwealth, I started in Canada, US, I'm going to UK, Ireland, Netherlands, Australia, hopefully New Zealand. And then I got to stop in Mexico even on the way back. So this is the plan. We are going to teach everybody that their responsibility, whether man, woman, and child, is to just say no to these restrictions. We already know how this goes. We already know what they plan to do. We already know the only way it stops is when everybody stops complying. So how about this time the name of the game is prevention. We
protest.
We stop complying before it starts. If we can stop it at the mask mandate stage, it can't go to the contact tracing, it can't go to the vaccine, it can't go to the passports, it stops right there. But the moment you comply with step 1, they're going to bring step 2. The moment you comply with step 2, they're going to bring step 3. And we can't afford another 2 to 3 years of tyranny. Because not only are they going to kill the small businesses, they're going to bring the climate change agenda, which they're already pushing through, and they're going to force it through. While you're worried about your mask and your jab and your job, they're going to be putting you in the 15-minute city. They're going to be putting you on a personal carbon allowance, bringing out the digital ID and putting you on the digital currency. And the digital ID is going to be linked to your vaccine passport, so it's never going to go away. And that is their goal, and that's why it's more imperative to stand up now than ever before.
Chris, what do you think about the Bank of International Settlements? What's your comment regarding the Bank of International Settlements? And Candace, please get in on this right now. You're going to be joined by the lovely Candace who's getting in on this. This is the great Chris Sky. Candace, jump in the fire here. Chris, please answer that question.
Well, for people that don't know, the BIS is like the central bank of central banks. So we already know that central banks are designed to impoverish a nation and control a nation through debt. Well, this is the one that controls all of them. It needs to be dismantled. I believe all the debt. Where do countries owe debt to? Where does the U.S. owe trillions of dollars of debt to these international banks on paper? These banks need to be dismantled. The people that run them need to be arrested and tried and convicted. And all the debts of all the world's countries need to go like this.
Chris, what do you think about the Great Pope? What is the Great Pope in your mind, Chris? What do you understand about the Great Pope?
The Great Pope.
They call him Orsini, Pepe Orsini. Who is this man?
Okay, so people that don't know have never heard of him. The Great Pope is supposedly a pope that actually rules above the pope that everybody knows about, and he rules from the shadows, and he does things from the shadows. All the nefarious agendas from the world, including the World Health Organization and World Economic Forum, supposedly originate from the Great Pope.
All right, now it's told to simmer down, so I'm going to simmer down a little bit. And
we're getting in trouble. We're not supposed to mention these things.
You can't talk about it.
You literally, he just said the words Great Pope, and everybody freaked out. I better not say Great Pope.
Candace, this is the great Chris Sky. Please ask Chris a question. He's on a tour right now, Candace. Yeah, go ahead. Ask Chris a question.
Well,
do you know who this man is?
No, I'm.
I didn't think you did. I didn't think you did. It's okay. He's Canada's. He's Canada's greatest freedom fighter. Okay.
Okay.
He's basically Canada's biggest hope to any type of freedom in that country.
Well, that's actually really, really good because Canada needs some hope right now. Oh man, just like we do though.
You guys are way better off than us, I promise.
Are you sure?
Yeah, he's pretty sure.
Okay, all right.
He's been arrested 27 times.
In Canada.
Oh,
in 3
wow.
years.
Oh,
73 charges.
Are you
This man is a legend, okay? This man is a legend. You know,
wait, arrested in Canada? That's like beating the Cub Scouts.
You sit down.
Not when I get arrested.
He's an Apache.
When I get arrested, because I wouldn't wear the mask, I wouldn't take a test, and I definitely wouldn't take a jab, they would treat me as non-compliant, so I would spend 23 hours and 50 minutes a day in a cell by myself every day. While the other inmates would get out twice a day, they could shower, they could go to the gym, they could watch TV, they could interact, they could eat. I was not allowed to do any of that, and they even disabled the hot water in my cell, so I couldn't make coffee, and I couldn't wash myself in the cell. So that was my life in prison, in Canada. It's not fun.
Candace, go ahead.
So were you like part of you saw a big movement out there with
Trucker
the
convoy.
trucker.
I was the one that started the original trucker convoy the year before the trucker convoy happened. Because they got us to the state of tyranny in Canada, where they actually put checkpoints between our provinces, like your states. So I was in Ontario, and I was watching a book, which was the first book in the history of the world to be banned by Amazon, by the way. And the day before, 2 days before it was supposed to launch, they arrested me. I got out, and I wanted to make it from Ontario all the way to the West Coast in 2 days, which is virtually impossible, while they had the checkpoints. And I took off with the guy who bailed me out of jail, who's actually a Muslim imam. And they and they tried to say I was breaching my bail conditions to put a warrant out for my arrest. So we had to change cars no less than 9 times to make it from Ontario through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and finally into British Columbia. When we made it into British Columbia through all their checkpoints, we found out British Columbia had been divided into 3 separate sections. So imagine Nevada was divided into North, Central, and South, and you couldn't even leave your section, let alone leave the state. So we literally had to get into a helicopter and fly over their checkpoints. I made it to where I had to go, launch my book even after Amazon banned it, and then we banded together over 100 trucks and other vehicles to create the first trucker convoy to protest against those different checkpoints. And we tried to bring everybody from BC all the way to Quebec, where we had over 100,000 patriots waiting for a protest. Only 2 of the 100 plus vehicles, mine and one other, made it to Quebec. But when we got there, we ended up with 150,000 people protesting, and that was the original precursor to the trucker convoy.
Right.
It brought millions of people to Ottawa. I was the main speaker there. We had something like 2.5 to 3.5 million out of 40 million people in Canada.
Wow.
And that's how we got our freedoms back.
This man is an international legend. You'll realize that more as you understand. But hey, go ahead, Candace.
So they're starting to are they starting to go back
100%.
to this stuff? I've been hearing about it. I've been hearing about things where they're going to try to start changing the way you can deal with your children. They're going to take away parents' rights. Like
They've
they'll
already-
take your kids and deem you unfit to be.
They're already doing that. They're doing that in the States too, even in California.
Yeah.
If your 4-year-old says they want to transition and you say no, they'll take them away from you. If your 4-year-old says he wants to eat candy canes every day for breakfast, you're a bad parent if you feed him candy canes, but you're a great parent if you feed him hormone blockers. Makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But Canada has just gone down a level of tyranny like you've never seen. They froze people's bank accounts. They took people's commercial business licenses. They passed a law recently that forces media companies to pay social media to put their content. So now if you're on Instagram or Facebook in Canada, you can't see any media. It'll say banned in Canada.
Right, yeah, this is just recent. I heard this, yeah.
CNN, even BBC, even like mainstream media that they want you to see because it brainwashes you, you can no longer see from Canada on Instagram or Facebook. And then after Justin Trudeau made this happen, he literally held a press conference and lambasted social media for not showing the media content of the wildfires and anything else the government deems important, when they are the ones that banned it in the first place. That's how hypocritical Canada is. That's how messed up Canada is.
When is this guy getting it out?
I believe he's going to call it.
So it's Chris from Moves. Chris is running for, what are you doing?
I was running for mayor of Toronto. Unfortunately, they said I lost. I filed a lawsuit, and it took them over a month to get back to me. And they got back to me in a way that forces me to refile the lawsuit. So they literally kicked the can down the road because everybody knows that election was illegitimate, just like all the elections here. It doesn't matter if it's Dominion or some other company. They use the same tactics of voting fraud, from phantom voters, multiple voters from the same address, fake voters to the same address, all done with algorithms that once it goes from one server to the main server, they can literally make it say whatever they want. So,
You didn't win the mayor's race in Toronto because you're not a coke addict, right?
and I'm not a
Chris.
communist.
I want you to talk about the word Anthony Sutton. That ring a bell with you, the name Anthony Sutton?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so look, this is the second time Chris has joined Discuss the Truth. Anthony Sutton exposed the Federal Reserve in the early 70s.
Okay, yes.
Okay, he's a
That's what I
former
know.
Stanford Hoover fellow.
Yes.
Jay Dyer on InfoWars talks about him fairly
Yeah.
frequently, Anthony Sutton.
The Federal Reserve was a creature that was designed to steal all your purchasing power through inflation. If you guys don't know the history of money, you got to know it right now, because the Federal Reserve was the reason why JFK got a bullet in the head. So, before the Federal Reserve was created, if you looked at a $1 bill in the U.S., it said silver certificate on the top. And now it looks identical to that, except it says Federal Reserve note. Well, what's the difference? A silver certificate meant that your $1 was tied to the value of 1 ounce of silver. So that kept your purchasing power intact. That is why in the 60s, a person made $10,000 a year, but a house cost $30,000. So a man could buy a house for 3 years of salary. Once the Federal Reserve took over and they created the fractional reserve system, where your dollar was no longer tied to gold and silver, and they can now loan out money exponentially based on the amount of gold reserves they had, all of a sudden your dollar started losing value. And how much did it lose? Well, now we know. $1 today, it takes you 20 of those Federal Reserve notes to buy 1 ounce of silver instead of $1 to buy 1 ounce of silver. That same guy that was making 10 grand a year now makes 30 grand a year, but that house that was 30 grand is now 600. So instead of 3 years of salary, it costs 20 years of salary. So instead of buying a house, you get a mortgage and you go into debt. This is what they did to steal the purchasing power. And that's why that slight change where it says Federal Reserve note makes all the difference. And that's why if you look on the back of a $1 bill, after the Federal Reserve took over, they put the Illuminati pyramid with the all-seeing eye and the little inscription in Latin that says, Novo Oro Seclorum, which means a new world order.
In what language?
Latin.
Correct. And all roads lead?
All roads lead to there. And
We're broke.
to
where?
Baptist.
We're broke.
To the Pope. Did you say the Pope, Roger? Did you say the Pope?
And why did JFK get killed, everybody? It's so easy. He created Executive Order 1110, which made silver legal tender again. So now Americans would have the ability to choose to use Federal Reserve notes or those wonderful silver dollars. And everybody knew that if you hold on to a Federal Reserve note, at the end of the year, it's going to be worth less. If you hold on to a silver dollar, at the end of the year, it's going to be worth more. So the average American would rather use dollars than Federal Reserve notes, and that would put the Federal Reserve out of business. So they put JFK out of business. And what did Lyndon B. Johnson do? The very first thing he did as president, look it up if you don't believe me, was rescind Executive Order 1110 and give the Federal Reserve control back of the money supply. And Henry Ford said it best. If the American people fully understood the money system, there would be a revolution before morning. So they spend a lot of time, effort, and money to make sure you are ignorant of all of these facts.
And here's a Canadian educating you on your history, America.
Yeah, why does a Canadian know more about the American monetary system than you guys do?
Because you've been brainwashed by mainstream media, and that's why you're watching us right now. Chris, you're heading to London. Is your stage going to be set up in the city of London by chance?
Oh my God, the last time we did the worldwide rally, it was the day that they were burying the Queen of England.
Oh.
So the amount of people there was astronomical. And they had me speaking, right with David Icke, by the way, on the steps of the very first central bank. The central bank of central banks, where all the tyranny started.
Wow.
It couldn't have been more symbolic.
Love it. Tony Gosling. You familiar with Tony Gosling?
No.
Okay, I'll make the introduction. There's a couple freedom fighters in Britain that I can introduce you to.
Introduce me to everybody. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at the Worldwide Rally. I'm going to be in Liverpool. I'm going to be filming a documentary in Oxford, filming, directing, and starring in, very first time ever, on 15-minute cities. And Oxford is the original 15-minute city, and it was already a nightmare last year when I was there. So this year, I'm going to go on the ground, and I'm going to show each and every one of you every single chilling aspect us so-called conspiracy theorists have been warning you about, and I'm going to show you them right in action. In England, I can't even rent an electric scooter without giving them my license and scanning it, my credit card and scanning it, taking my phone and making a 10-second video selfie, and then uploading all of that to the worldwide digital identity system. Otherwise, you cannot even ride an electric scooter in Great Britain, let alone get a car. That's the world they've already created, and wait till you see how bad it's going to be.
Okay, as we wind down, Chris, I appreciate your time. Candace, I want to give you an opportunity to ask Chris one more question here. What's coming to your mind right now? You look in his eyes. Ask him.
Follow you.
Oh, boom!
Well, I'm probably the only person in this that gives out my phone number, because I want people to know I'm authentic. I want people to know I serve the people, and I am not afraid of anyone. I have nothing to hide. And this is the way I've met the most important people in my life. So here you go. Take it down. 416-400-9994. She just did.
Hold on, let me get it out. I got some other numbers.
Say it again.
416-400-9994. And if you want to hit up all my socials, they get banned a lot, but I still have quite the following. Go to my website, realchrissky.com, realchrissky.com. You can also support our tour there. Just SKY. SKY.
Like friendly skies. Fly the friendly skies.
416-400-9994. 9994, realchrissky.com.
Is that where we can find all your?
Yeah, all my Twitter's on there.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
Oh, okay. I said so. That's where we can find all his content. 'Cause I'm really interested in following.
You love him now, I know.
Like honestly, this is amazing.
This is the man. I tell you,
I
Candace.
think you know what. I think we're gonna have to do a selfie real quick because I have a.
Okay, hold on. Let's wind it down. Wind it down. Wind it down.
So, Chris, Citizen Media News is friends with Cheryl Gallant.
Okay.
You know Cheryl Gallant?
Yes, I do.
She's the most conservative member of Canadian Parliament there is. She's the only one that voted with President Trump on the Paris Accords. We've actually done an interview with Jay Denny and Kerry Diode.
Okay.
You know, so we've had the opportunity to interview some of those guys. And my wife is Canadian. She's from up north, outside of Ottawa, and I was in Canada a few weeks ago. And the one thing that stood out to me that I hadn't seen before on this trip is, and it matches up what's going in the States. You never see a Biden for president sign. You see Trump signs, Trump 2024. You see the FJB signs, F Joe Biden, right? But in Canada, what do you see all over?
F Trudeau.
F Trudeau.
F Trudeau is the #1 selling flag in the world on Amazon. I did a world tour last year. Every country I went to, they all hate Trudeau.
But he's got nice hair.
It's getting worse though. Ever since he went through his divorce, he's looking a little haggard.
Hey, you know what's interesting is that Trudeau shares the same ancestor as me, and his name is Jules Trottier. I'm not a socialist. Okay,
One
go
more
ahead.
question.
So socialism doesn't run in your bloodline. That's good.
It does, and I'm combating it.
Oh gosh.
All right, so the most important question.
No, it doesn't.
The most important statement that we can make. Maple Leafs suck.
Honestly, I have battered wife syndrome from over 30 years of watching the Maple Leafs, and that's my only comment on that.
All right, thank you, Roger. Okay.
Wait. I was born on April 30th, 1967, and my wife's brother-in-law.
So you actually almost got to witness the Stanley Cup.
No. I was born on April 30th, 1967, and my brother-in-law is a die-hard Leafs fan. And I make fun of him because the last time the Leafs won the Cup was on May 2nd, 1967. So the Leafs won a Cup during my lifetime. I was 2 days old.
That's what I said.
Yep.
All right, so let me ask the last question. We'll wind out. Candace, you got anything on your mind? All right, this is what I'm going to ask. Now, Chris and I share a common friend. Chris, you're very nice, and you came on my podcast a couple years ago. We've stayed in touch. I've supported you, and I'm not going to reveal the person's name, but you know who I'm talking about, I believe. We just talked about
the female.
Yeah. So
okay.
this is the question.
About.
And if you know that person, you know a little bit of her history. The question is this, Chris, from your understanding, what happened to John McAfee?
He was killed.
Why?
What do you think? Why?
Yeah.
Why? I'm asking you.
Because he did too much stuff against the state. He exposed secrets. He exposed security flaws. He did all kinds of shit. I can't even name one main reason. They probably had a whole list of reasons why they want him dead. Probably even more reasons why they want me dead.
Yeah. And what do you think about the first American president now being arrested and booked? What do you think about that?
Donald Trump's like me. He gets arrested and it increases his popularity. He's not going to jail. All it's going to do is help him win the election. You think he gives a shit? You saw his mugshot. Did not look like someone who gave a shit, or not like someone who knew he was going to get off by the next day and knew that it was all bullshit.
Chris, what's your message for Americans as a Canadian that's standing up to your regime? What do you leave for Americans? What do you want?
Two things. Number one, respect and adore and thank God for your Constitution. Because why do you think we had a trucker convoy of millions of people and you guys got to sit on your couch with your guns and eat apple pie? It's because you had a Constitution with a First Amendment and a Second Amendment. And any time one of you, a business or a government entity, challenged a mandate, mask mandate, vax mandate in court, you won because of the Constitution. And you didn't go to jail, you didn't get fined. So I understand why you guys didn't have to fight back that hard. In Canada, we didn't have that. We have a Charter of Rights, which is useless. And our government just stepped right over it. We didn't have those same protections. So we got arrested, we got fined, we got charged, we got thrown in jail. We had our bank accounts frozen. We had our business's license taken. Everything they could do in a tyrannical society, Canada did to us. And that is why we had to fight as hard as we did. And that is why I am a representative that has a very unique perspective in this. So when I tell you, the one thing you have to remain in all of this, no matter what, is positive. Do not let them make you feel negative. No despair, no hopelessness, no anger, no spite. When you stand up to them, when you just say no, when we initiate united non-compliance, it has to be out of love. It has to be out of self-defense, love for your friends, your family, your country, for the world. When we do that, you cannot be stopped, and you can combine not only with other like-minded Americans, but with like-minded people all over the world. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring this message, I'm going to bring that light, I'm going to bring that energy, and we're going to use it, and we're going to create a movement that's going to be like a tidal wave that's going to wash away the evil from the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Sky.
You still have the queen on your money, though.
No,
Oh, okay. That's pretty good. I know.
not for long.
But he doesn't know how to answer anyway.
Not for long.
You're the only money with a beaver.
They're putting an activist. They're taking John A. MacDonald, who was the founder of Canada, off the $10 bill, and they want to put our version of Rosa Parks on the dollar bill. A woman called Viola Roseman, who sat in a movie theater and wouldn't give up her seat, just like Rosa on the bus. So you take a founder of Canadian history and you put a woman that was famous during the Canadian Civil Rights Movement, which was never had Jim Crow, never had segregation, we never had slavery. So, like, why was it so important in Canada? Like, literally, slaves escaped to Canada for freedom, but we're gonna pretend like we had some kind of racist slave movement here? It's ridiculous.
Roger, you're not happy with that answer.
No. Putin? Yes or no?
Putin's okay.
Poutine.
Oh, poutine.
Yeah.
The fries and gravy and cheese curds. It's death on a plate, but it tastes good. I don't eat that stuff.
Chris, thanks for joining us on Discussing the Truth.
Thank you for having me. I told you I'd come by.
Yeah, you did.